What is going on there, YouTube, and welcome to Fresh Comic Stories. This is the channel where we sit down and cover different comic book stories, and we are currently right now covering Brian Michael Bendis Daredevil run. In this video, we are going to continue that coverage and pick up with the next story. Now, in our last video, we learned that the Kingpin has returned back to New York. And we know that he's back to basically regain everything he lost while he was gone. The question is, what is going to be Daredevil's move? Because the world still knows that Daredevil is Matt Murdock. How will he be able to manage trying to convince the world that he is not Daredevil and deal with the Kingpin? Well, you will find out in this video right here. And so I do hope you enjoy today's video. Please leave me a like down below, but here we go. So to begin this story, we pick up on some kind of sitcom show where the story follows this young girl who is the main star of the show around the set. Now, this character is not a well-known character in Marvel Comics, but she is kind of a cool character to have around. But we don't learn who this character is until she goes into her dressing room between breaks and she is greeted by someone. That is when she is greeted by the Kingpin, and the Kingpin knows her secret, that this lady has dissociative identity disorder, meaning she has two different personalities, one of them being Mary Walker, someone who is a star for a sitcom TV show. Her other personality is Typhoid Mary, someone who is crazy in the head, and when she's in her other personality, she is able to access her powers, and we're going to see what her powers are down the road, but she is recruited by the Kingpin to help him with something. Now we pick up with Millie Donovan, who we met in our last video, and she was this new girl to walk into Daredevil's life, as maybe to be his new girlfriend, except when they went on their first date, Daredevil was arrested by the police because they thought he murdered the owner of the Daily Globe. And she has not seen him since then, and so you have her talking to her friend Lori again, where they both come to an agreement that maybe she should see him again, mainly because she found it fun being part of a murder case. This leads to us picking up with the Kingpin, and we see that he is in Bolivia, where he has hunted down his lawyer Dini. Remember that after Kingpin was put on life support, Dini helped Vanessa Fisk, the wife of the Kingpin, hunt down the people who betrayed the Kingpin. But after they did that, well, Vanessa and Demi sold everything the Kingpin owned away. And so the Kingpin is upset that his lawyer allowed his wife to do that, and now he is trying to regain everything he lost. But he also kills Demi for doing what he did. Now we finally pick up with Matt Murdock, and we check up on him to see how he is doing after everything in our last video, where we see him and Foggy are having a normal conversation until we see that Milia appears again. Of course, this leads into them kind of rekindling their love again, I guess. And so we see them try to do a redo for their first date, except while they are walking on their date to whatever diner they plan to go to, that is when they are greeted by Typhoid Mary, and we learn that she has psychic abilities, including pyrokinesis, telekinesis, and telepathy. And with her pyrokinesis, she set Matt on fire. Now the story does switches over to this random guy who's doing a drug run, and this takes place 2 days before Matt Murdock was set on fire. And with this guy, we see him right now doing his usual run, where he sells the drugs, picks up some money from another guy, and then plans to move on to meet up with his provider to get more drugs to sell in the streets. The problem is that when he arrives to his provider's little apartment, he walks in to see that everyone is dead in the room. And so it seems like another gang just got rid of this random group of thugs. But when this thug runs out of the apartment and tries to get away before he is also killed, that is when he is greeted by a group called Sano, and make it seem like they were the ones who killed everyone in that apartment. And this is showing us that with the Kingpin no longer being around, every gang is trying to take over the city, even gangs from outside of New York like Chicago or Philadelphia. This is where we see Typhoid Mary appear, and we see that she's here to kill everyone. Like this Sentinel gang thing at first, they had the advantage because they have guns and swords. Except we see her begin the process of beating down on all of them and gets rid of every single member of the Sentinel gang except for one. And there is a good reason why she let this one person survive. The reason why is because she is working for the Kingpin, and the Kingpin wants to let this Sentinel member live. Also let the first of We Were Following Along live as well, to tell their bosses that the Kingpin has returned. But then we pick up with Agent Driver, and we were first introduced to him back in our last video, where we saw that he was leading a FBI force, but he was the one who arrested the Owl in our last video. Well, now he is here to kind of introduce himself to the Kingpin, stating that he is going to be the one watching the Kingpin closely, waiting for the Kingpin to mess up, because once he does, Agent Driver can lock him away. And Agent Driver knows that the Kingpin being back in the city is more the fact that the Kingpin is trying to regain what he lost thanks to Vanessa Fisk. And that was really it for that chapter, just showing us, hey, Agent Driver is going to be around for a little bit longer now. Now getting back to the present day, we pick up with Typhoid Mary burning Matt Murdock, and it does seem like that he could be killed by the flames that she created. And you have Jessica Jones step in to fight her, which you would think would be enough to stop her, but it is not. Typhoid Mary does give Jessica a run for her money, and the flames that weren't on Matt were put out luckily. Now remember, Jessica Jones' powers are really just super strength. She does not have unbreakable skin. And so Mary is able to stab Jessica, which caused her to slow down just a tad bit. Except that is when you have Luke Cage appear, and with him being here, Mary can't really rely on her powers like she wants to. Also, her swords are basically useless too, all thanks to the fact that Luke Cage has unbreakable skin. And so Mary is trying to take on Luke Cage, Jessica Jones, and at the end of the fight, Matt Murdock does jump in too to help knock her out, which they do finally knock her out. And so the day is saved, except at the end of the fight, Matt does pass out because of his wounds from this fight. Now, this fight right here is going to come back and make things worse for Matt later on. Jumping to later on that night, we see Matt is meditating, hoping it will help him recover from his wounds. Emilia is there as well, but she is right now laying in bed behind him. And this is where Matt is confronted by Agent Driver, and this begins them coming to understanding that Agent Driver is here to kind of help Matt out, telling him they locked up Mary, and they are doing their best to keep the press from breaking down Matt's front door, and he is going to be here to watch over Matt. But you also have Agent Driver tell Matt that his little fight outside his front door does not help him when he is trying to convince the world that he is not Daredevil. But after Agent Driver leaves, you have Matt get in bed with Milia, and they discuss the fact on why Matt didn't want her around. Because right now his life is dangerous 24/7. And there is nothing he can do about it, and she could be killed just for knowing him, and he wants her to understand that this is not a game. Except to her, she liked this new thrill in her life, being around him and stuff, and so she is down with being with him still, even though now on a second date she almost died by a super villain. Now we pick up with the Kingpin, who we see that he is making his big move basically, where he plans to go after Matt finally, and we see him meeting up with someone to achieve the goal of messing with Matt's life. And this is where we find out that he is talking to no other than Bullseye. And this is a bold move for the Kingpin, because Bullseye is the one guy who has constantly messed up Matt Murdock's life, and so it makes sense for him to bring in Bullseye. But the story does jump back over to Matt Murdock and Milia laying in bed, where she wakes up to find out that Matt Murdock is going out as Daredevil again. And she is wondering why, because to her, he should be resting since what just happened to him with Typhoid Mary. But he tells her that he has to go because he needs to stop the Kingpin. He knows that the Kingpin will not stop until he is able to achieve whatever goal he has now that involves Matt Murdock. And so Matt leaves to go handle the Kingpin. Now, when Matt leaves, the story stays on Milia for a minute. It does not switch over to Matt going over to the Kingpin. And we see her laying in bed, thinking about how much she loves being the girlfriend of Matt Murdock. Except that is when we see that she is confronted by someone, and it is no other than Bullseye. And this is what the Kingpin wanted Bullseye to do. He wanted him to kill another girlfriend of Matt Murdock. Remember that Bullseye killed 2 of the women that Daredevil loved. And so right now, he's trying to add a 3rd to that list. At the moment where Bullseye thinks he's about to kill Daredevil's new girlfriend, well, Daredevil comes back, and it leads into a battle we have seen so many times. Daredevil versus Bullseye. It is something that will always happen, except this time you have Daredevil tell Bullseye that he is tired of him, that he is tired of toying with Bullseye because Bullseye has hurt him enough, taking so many people from him and other people in the world. And so we see Daredevil kind of get savage with Bullseye, like beating him down and making him bleed from his head because he is carving a symbol into his head. Daredevil is tired of Bullseye always coming around and trying to mess things up for Matt Murdock's life. And after Daredevil basically beat this man to the ground, that is when we find out that apparently Daredevil was working with Agent Driver. Like they knew Bullseye or someone else would come here to finish up the job that Mary Typhoid couldn't do. And so it leads to Daredevil just handing Bullseye over to Agent Driver and his FBI force. But the story is still not done just yet. You have Matt go upstairs and check up on Milia to see how she is doing, where of course she is okay and still wants to be part of his superhero life. And this proceeds into Daredevil thinking that he has to finally stop this, and he knows the only way to do that is to go after the Kingpin and stop him. We then pick up with a few pages where we see a bunch of dead bodies, and I mean a bunch of dead bodies, y'all. We are seeing bodies popping up in the most unusual places. But these men had a hand in trying to take over the Kingpin's area while he was away. And so this is the Kingpin coming back and cleaning house basically. Killing them off is him making a statement that now he is back in the picture, everything is under his control again. And we see him calling a meeting and letting people know that he is back and everything is under his control. Now, of course, you have some of these guys trying to tell him no because he has been gone and things were better for them on their own rather than working for the Kingpin. Except you have the Kingpin tell these guys that if they want to deny what he wants, well, he will kill their family. And so you have them basically agree to the Kingpin's new terms. Now this leads to the best moment of the book because you have Daredevil appear at this meeting, just crashing in and stuff, where we do get to see these two fight out, and Kingpin and Daredevil, a fight we have seen so many times in comics, but this time it is different because this fight is more of Daredevil telling us that he had enough of the Kingpin, like he was more aggressive with Bullseye earlier. And this is Daredevil being more aggressive with the Kingpin as well. And so you have Daredevil just beat down on the Kingpin until the Kingpin is actually knocked out. Now to wrap up this story though, you have Daredevil take the Kingpin to another spot where a bunch of men had already agreed to work for the Kingpin or trying to become the new Kingpin. And you have Daredevil make these men spread the word that he is tired of people like them pushing stuff into the streets of Hell's Kitchen that are killing people. He showed them what he did to the Kingpin and explained that if they continue, he will do the same thing to them as well. That if they want somebody to be their boss, someone to control them, someone to look up to or whatever, he will be the new Kingpin of New York, and they can spread the word. And remember that the world knows right now that Matt Murdock is Daredevil. And so to him, this is him saying that Matt Murdock is the Kingpin now. And this is where we are going to end today's video. And so guys, please leave me a like down below and also subscribe to the channel for more content to come in the near future. Also, any suggestions on books I should read, well, please let me know in the comments below, because you never know, your suggestion could be a future video down the road. But guys, I'm out of here, and I will see you on the next comic book video. Later, guys.